We're standing downtown Green Lake at the outlet to Big Green Lake, which is the Puchyan River. All 110 square miles of drainage area flow through the 8 tributaries into Big Green Lake, and eventually flow out through this channel behind me. From here, the Puchyan flows about 6.5 miles downstream to the Fox River, through Lake Winnebago, and eventually dumps into Lake Michigan at Green Bay. The water coming out of the lake is extremely clear, so all those pollutants that run into the lake that we saw earlier through green water and phosphorus-ridden water, most of that's been filtered out and stays in the lake. The cleaner water is leaving, but that's leaving that pollutants within the lake system to produce more problems in the future. The lake volume is so huge, a lot of the pollutants are able to settle out or get taken up by different algae and plants within the lake. So we may have algae blooms, we may have plant blooms, and that's starting to retain those pollutants in the lake more. So we see good water quality coming out. Well, one thing that's happened here around the turn of the century, or I'm not sure exactly when this dam, I think it's the 1850s, raised the height of Green Lake about 5 feet. So a lot of those backwater areas we saw at County Marsh and at Silver Creek Inlet were actually wetlands that had a lot better filtering capacity. They would have been maybe a few inches deep or even been upland wetland type areas, so it'd be more of a bog or swamp type of an area. So when those soils were flooded with this dam, that really started the ball rolling on causing some issues with algae growth and reducing filtering capacity. The mill pond's a small section of lake between the dam and the main lake, and it is pretty shallow overall. It has a lot of plant growth in it, so it does add to some kind of final polishing or final cleaning of the water before it leaves the lake. But even at that point, the water's been pretty well filtered through the plants coming into the lake, and also just the depth and time the water spends in the lake. When water spends 20-25 years in a lake, it has a lot of time to kind of settle stuff out. And there's always the old adage that the solution to pollution is dilution. That's true to a certain extent, but eventually you get a tipping point where you can't dilute anymore. You put so much algae and phosphorus into a system, you start seeing those negative impacts in the main lake too. Big Green Lake itself is about 7,000 acres, and most people think of Big Green Lake as just that 7,000 acres. But in reality, the watershed is part of the lake. That's what affects water quality, what affects water clarity, and what affects how you boat, fish, and swim in the lake. And that watershed is 66,000 acres. So if you think of that as being 66,000 football fields or 110 square miles, that's a pretty big impact. So everything that happens in your backyard, in the agricultural fields, on the streets of Green Lake, on the streets of Ripon, all have some impact on the lake eventually. The aging process of a lake is called eutrophication. It's a natural process where lakes eventually get a lot of nutrients in them, fill in, become shallow, and eventually convert to wetlands. That process for Big Green Lake is probably in the tens of thousands of years. But as far as the nutrient loading, we, as people living on the land, using the land, are speeding that up. And it's going to cause more health issues, less enjoyment of the water. You know, if you have a lot of weeds that are not supposed to be there naturally, entangling boats, causing swimming issues, it really impacts your enjoyment of the lake. So what we're looking at and how we're working through a system that big is we're looking at each individual tributary and what's the worst one, what's the best one, and how can we slowly improve those tributaries to improve the water quality in those streams, therefore improving the water quality in the lake. Well, I know it's kind of the old saying of reduce your impact, travel lightly, but in a realistic sense, you know, if you're a homeowner, you know, if you're fertilizing your lawn, if you're using pesticides, those things that can wash off, make sure it stays on the lawn, apply it at the right rate, keep it off hard surfaces where it's going to wash away. Farmers, they can use different farming techniques, and we can help them with different structural practices from the Land Conservation Department to help slow water down, help it soak in. So the main thing is follow the water from your roof to the stream. Where does it go? Does it have a chance to soak in, or is it just running off to the street, into a gutter, and eventually downstream? Same with agricultural lands or lakeshore owners. Is everything channelizing and flowing right down into the lake, or is it having a place to kind of settle out? And those places are usually lowlands, wetlands, places with vegetation that can use that phosphorus before it reaches the lake. The city of Green Lake is really surrounded by water, and it's really a focus of the community. All the festivals and art fairs that happen here happen along the banks here or just over the hill at Deacon Mills on the main lake. So this part of the lake is really important to the community identity, and to have that lake be a clean, clear, enjoyable lake with good fisheries is something that's really important to this community.